Welcome. I'm Dick Miller, and this time of year we all know what's going on, and that is it's election season. And in fact, I think it's about 28 days from today, November 6th, we have the responsibility or the right, however you may want to look at it, to go to the polls, cast our ballot for a number of very important seats in the Congress, state legislature, and even some local races. Today, I'd like to welcome Jeff Smith, who's the 31st District, Senate District candidate, Democratic candidate for, well, Senate.
Yeah.
And welcome.
Glad
to have you here today.
Yeah.
I just want to make a real quick comment. I was at a meeting, several weeks ago, and I made the comment the best way to get voter interest and to share your message is to go door to door. You probably remember that. And I got to looking, and we have about 200,000 people in this district, don't we?
Not quite
Not quite.
200,000. I would say 180, 185,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that equates to probably 60,000 doors.
Oh, at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably more.
And
yeah.
So obviously, you can't get to every door. You're trying, I know, aren't you?
We have knocked on over 20,000 doors.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
I still believe that's the best way.
It is the best way.
It's a handshake.
No question. Yeah.
And sharing your ideas and dreams and so forth.
Connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, this is why you're here today, because we know you can't get out to everybody. And so I know you take every opportunity you can to get your face out there, your information out there, so people are educated, are better prepared to vote, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Well, first thing we should do is ask you to introduce yourself to our audience. And we were just visiting with the station manager, John, and he indicates that we reach primarily Trempealeau County and Little and Jackson and some of Eau Claire County. So that's my county. I live here and I serve on the board here. So
Yeah.
it's an important area for me, and I'm sure it's going to be important for you too.
Well, the Senate district covers parts and sometimes all of 7 counties. So it's all the way. I use the corners of city of Eau Claire to the city of Prescott, down to Trempealeau, over to Black River Falls, and it covers, Jackson County, Trempealeau County, Buffalo County, Pepin County, Pierce County, Dunn County, Eau Claire County. So there's a lot of area to cover.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to get to all
and
60,000 doors.
And that's why I really appreciate being here today.
Yeah, well, we enjoy having you here. It's important that you get your message out, because I think our job here at the station, I think, is to educate people so that when they go to the polls, they better know, they're better prepared.
Yeah, that's right.
Better prepared to vote.
That's all we ask.
So if you could kind of give us an idea how life has prepared you to run for state senate. I think
Sure.
that's important for our audience to hear.
I grew up in a family that my father complained about politics all the time, and he didn't do a lot about it, but just having those conversations that I kept hearing, all those complaints, always kept me interested in thinking about it. But it was only when I had children, and I was 35 when my first daughter was born. But my wife said I could continue to work like I was, which, by the way, I was building a business, a window cleaning business that my father started when I was a child, and I bought from him as an adult, and turned this 2-man operation into 22 employees. But that took a lot of work and took a lot of my time, but it was fine when we didn't have children. And she said to me, you can continue to do this 12, 14-hour days, but once our children get to school age, you're going to volunteer. You see, my wife's a teacher, and what people don't realize always is that teachers who will advocate constantly for parental involvement in their kids' education, teachers have a hard time themselves having their hands on their own children's education, because they are out, of course, in the classroom with everybody else's children. So it became my job as her surrogate and as my own duty as a parent to volunteer. When I did that, it really turned me around and changed my life from being solely focused on building my own business and my own life to thinking about others and how education affects so many families and children and everything else that affects their lives. And realizing that, you know, I've had actually a really good privileged life. And a lot of people don't have the opportunities I've had. And I found some skills, life skills that I have in leadership and political savvy that just lifted me into a position of people wanting me to run for office. They wanted me on school board. They wanted me to do other things. I actually was my town chair in the town of Brunswick that I live in Eau Claire County. But all the things that I did as a volunteer and as a local official was never enough because the real policy makers are in the state legislature. So I determined that I had to be in that position to make a difference. And I won a seat in 2006 against a longtime incumbent. I wasn't supposed to win, but I'm a hard worker. And like we mentioned already, I knocked on a lot of doors then too. It really is the key, building relationships. That's what I'm really good at anyway, even as a business person, as a family person, and as a politician. It's building relationships throughout life that really makes a difference. And that's what I'm good at. I made that happen, won that seat, served 2 terms, but now I'm coming back after 8-year hiatus because this Senate seat is open. I see a lot of need for leadership in our state legislature and in our state, and common sense and ordinary people need to, like myself, need to get involved and run for office. So I think I'm really prepared in a lot of ways: experience, life experience, political experience, understanding of people, and truly grounded as far as being out there and available for anyone to speak to me. I think that's what representation is all about.
Now, you mentioned relationships, and that's something maybe we can explore briefly. We don't know, obviously, the number of Republicans and number of Democrats who are going to win seats this time. But assuming it's close, how will that relationship idea be important in working on legislation that's near and dear to your heart?
You know, that's exactly why I think I'm needed down there. When I was there, I chaired a committee. It was elections and campaign reform. And I'm a Democrat chairing a committee, but whenever I introduced a bill or someone else introduced a bill into my committee, I actually contacted the Republicans on my committee and set up meetings individually with them first so that they knew what was coming. They could make suggestions from their perspective because they have a different perspective, and I appreciate that. And I think that was one of the things that really made me successful when I was there. People trusted me. It's all about building trust when you build relationships. And I have the ability to do that, not only the ability to do that, but the need to do that. I actually appreciate different perspectives to help me see past past my own bubble that I might live in, or the people that I generally talk to.
Well, I guess my experience in the county is sort of the same way, that you need to respect everybody's opinion and work in the common ground area if you can do that. We haven't seen a lot of that.
No, but you know, that's what democracy is supposed to be about. You know, democracy is about a 2-party system that we live in, but it's taking the 2 different, very politically varied ideas and bringing them together to move us forward. And we're not moving forward because we're not seeing a lot getting done because of the very, very distant way they are acting with each other.
I want to just mention, might be a good opportunity because I'd like to get into some of your priorities as you move ahead in your campaign and in the election. I just would like to mention that Jeff has a website, togetherwithjeff.com, and and you can pull it up, capitalize the T on together or not, because it'll pull up.
I think it'll pull up no matter what.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
Google togetherwithjeff.com, you'll find it.
Because he deals with and talks about, well, not in print, but also there's some discussion about some of the positions that he has taken and some of the priorities, concerns that he has. And maybe a lead into one of them, real quick, would be experience that we here in the county have had. One of the things you mentioned is water purity, and having water for not only consumption for drinking, but also for other uses that we have. And fortunately, we have a lot of good groundwater in this state. One thing that in the last few years, I think we've had a movement away from, or maybe not filling some DNR positions in research, and as well as those people who come out and make sure that things are going well with various water usages. And then that ties me into this area of mining, sand mining that we have in the county. And I think probably the biggest share of the sand mining in this state is Trempealeau, Eau Claire, and Chippewa counties. A lot of it's going on here. And my concern has been, as perhaps as a representative of the county for several years, is someone coming in and assisting local people, local governments, as well as the mining management, to maintain a good record of water usage. I don't know if you can tie that in with your concerns about water or expand on that.
Well, it is all tied together. Just like large farming operations too. Same sort of, they're all tied to how we manage our water, our air, our water, our ground, because the fact is, and the same reason I continue to run and continue to be involved as an organizer and activist, is because we're not going to be here forever, but the land and water and air are. And it was what we leave behind. Not just that, but also economy, all the things that we leave behind. How are we going to be remembered? What's our legacy? Is our legacy going to be that we let it all go and we didn't believe scientists, and we even fired the scientists because we wanted to just be able to do whatever we wanted to make profit? I think it's important that our economy is strong and succeeds, but at the same time we need to be very careful. We need to trust scientists. We need to have an even playing field for everyone. And let's take sand mining as a good example of the fact that these are companies from out of state who come here and not only take our sand away, but also take the profits with them. And mining of all kinds is a short-term industry and a short-term economy. So it's great to have those jobs, no question about that. It's really good for our short-term economy, but it's not long-term. We have to think long-term. What's going to be left after that mining is done? Even now, we just saw a layoff by High Crush of 37% of their workforce. And why is that? Because they're starting to use the sand in Texas because it's cheaper to use that sand, because that's closer to where they're using it. So they don't have to transport it so far. So the signals are there that this is not going to last. But in the meantime, make sure that we trust the science behind all these things, and give our local governments, by the way, an opportunity to get some benefit from the sand mining. Why shouldn't we have a extraction fee for local towns and local counties to pay for the roads that are actually being damaged by all the traffic and heavy traffic from sand mining? This is all tied together, right? And then, of course, the environment itself.
So we've got a short-term and long-term issues here, and we can't forget that long-term issue at all.
No,
Yeah,
and
yes.
in politics, that's really the biggest mistake made of all. Is the very short-term thinking. We need politicians to be thinking long-term.
And I agree with you. I think this has been a big problem statewide and nationally, as well as locally. We think this year's budget or this election.
Yeah, it's all about the next election.
Yeah, and not you know, I think this is one of the most difficult things in our style of government, is to think beyond the election.
Yeah.
It really is difficult, and I share with you that that's a real concern, and I don't, there's no easy answer to that except people who are willing to step up and be courageous.
Yeah, and that's right. Courage, backbone, but also just realize, you know what, this isn't what I just want to serve my community and leave a legacy behind that I can be proud of, rather than trying to build some sort of career in politics. I'm 63 years old. I shouldn't have to need to do this, but I feel the need because of my children behind me. And, you know, so let's face it, we need people like that in government, and I'm not bragging about myself. I'm just saying we need people who are more concerned about the future than about the next election.
You have listed several other areas of concern, and I'd like you to go ahead and share with us some of these concerns that you have, and maybe some direction you think would be worthwhile to work on and attack these issues or problems.
Yeah, okay, well, let's see, rattle off some serious concerns. When I first got into politics in the first place, again, I mentioned it was schools and related to children and education.
Why don't you go ahead and hit the public
So,
education
Yeah,
issue
so that's
first.
that's what drove me in the first place, was that we have a formula that doesn't work. It relies on property tax, which gives politicians in the state level the opportunity to point at school boards and local officials and blame them for your taxes. When in fact, as a small business owner, I learned early on then that I had to write a quarterly check or make a quarterly deposit for my own income tax. If everybody had to do that instead of getting it picked out of their check before they ever see it, they would probably think differently about property tax, but that's the difference. You actually write a check for that property tax. And so I think that we need to get away from the property tax as being the sole or at least the major supporter of our education and our public schools. We need a different formula. That's why I was placed on the Governor's Task Force for Education before I ever ran for office, because I became so involved, and they recognized that I had some proclivity to making something happen. But we still haven't done anything. That's back in 2003 and 4. Instead, we just keep talking about it. It's recognized on both sides of the aisle that the formula doesn't work. It's working against us, and it's most especially hurting rural school districts. The first school districts that are going to fail and go bankrupt are going to be rural school districts. And then what happens? We're back to the system of busing our kids to 2 hours one way to get to a school in a big city. That's or whatever you know, who knows what happens out in Montana and North Dakota. You send your kids to a boarding place for the whole school year. We don't want to do that sort of thing. We're better than that. We need to be quit trying to play political games with our education. And one of those games being played is the fact that we're sending vouchers to private schools. So our tax dollars, public tax dollars, are paying for private schools. And that's been opened up. You know, the Pandora box is open for vouchers, and people don't understand how that's affecting them. And it is. At every household, every property tax bill you pay is going part of that is going to pay for private education. We can't afford 2 education systems from our public dollars. That needs to happen, that we get rid of doing this. This is pure politics, pure special interests getting into our pockets. So that's education. I mean, we just don't have enough time to get into all that needs to be done, because that's a very complicated formula, but we need to change that. Then there's health care. We hear about health care all the time and the need for access to health care. It's the same thing. Politics needs to get its hands out of health care. Health care is a right, not a privilege. It's not something we should be playing around with politics. We should be accepting that Medicaid expansion money from the federal government, because guess what? That's our dollars. That's my dollars and your dollars out of our pockets that go through our federal taxes that's sitting there because we have leaders in this state who want to play politics, we're not getting our money back into the state of Wisconsin. So we have the highest cost of health insurance in the country right here. That's got to change. Let's get that out of the system completely, back to getting politics out of something that is so very important that affects people's lives, literally. But you know, we hear, when I knock on all those doors, and I know we're going to run out of time and we're just never going to get through all these issues, but when I knock on doors and I ask people over and over and over, what's your number one issue? You know, at first they'll say, I haven't been thinking about it. I snuck up on them at the door, but if I start talking to them and they say, yeah, I care about my roads are crumbling and our taxes are not coming back to me. My schools, I'm afraid we're going to lose our public school, or I can't get health care access, or my wages are stagnant. But then they finally say on their own, but you know what I'm really tired of? I'm tired of the divisiveness in our legislature, in our Congress. The fact that they can't work together, that we have partisanship getting in the way. That's the number one issue that I'm finding with all the voters everywhere I go. And if we don't address that, our democracy is at stake. If we don't come up with a system of redrawing district lines so that's out of the hands of the politicians who it benefits, we are really in trouble. So that's one of the first things we're going to do when we get into office.
Are there some models out there that appeal to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have focused in on the Iowa model, which has worked well for Iowa for over 30 years. And that's easy to focus on one that we know it works. But there are others out there too I think we could explore. But definitely what we're doing is wrong. And we need to take it out of this hands of the, like I said, the politicians that it benefits.
Well, the unfortunate thing is that it's hard to find enlightened individuals who are willing to give up some of their power and to share it.
Yeah.
But I'm sounding really political today, but if you watch the hearings that we've had on TV recently, one of the problems is that we don't have all groups represented in our legislatures. We don't have all ages, genders, nationalities. Somehow having all the groups well represented, including the old white guys like me.
Yeah, right.
We're all important.
That's right.
And we all have different needs.
Yeah.
Obviously, someone who's 25 who can't get health care has a different need than I do who I'm on Medicare. So we have to have everybody's opinion out there, don't we?
It was very clear when you watch congressional hearings like that.
Yeah, I'm not taking any position on the congressional hearing. I'm just saying that all of us need to be represented in our legislatures.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
You touched upon roads. This is a big issue for the counties. We've struggled here, as well as every county, trying to find money to keep our county road system up. Townships struggle, cities struggle. What options are out there as far as you can see?
Roads are supposed to have a life expectancy of 20 or 25 years from what I understand, as I recall as a town chair. And so you're supposed to have a cycle where you can get to each road in that period of time. Well, we have 45 miles of road in my township. And even when I left there, when I got elected to the legislature and gave up my town job, we were already only able to do 1 mile a year. And I think it's a lot less than that now. We have a problem with a state government who's not only not making it a priority, they're not returning the shared revenue back to our local governments like they should. The shared revenue formula in the state of Wisconsin was originally meant to send 80% of the money our money that goes to them back to our communities as the needs were determined. It's like 12% now. So and then there's our road shares that's supposed to come back to us. It's our dollars. And we're treating our local officials like they don't, they know better in Madison. I know we hear from politicians over and over about, oh, I'm all about local control. Well, that's hogwash. They're only about controlling the locals. They don't believe that a local elected official has the authority to do the things they do. So as soon as a local county board or school board does some things that somebody might have a different ideology about in the state legislature, they take that power away from the county and local officials. I believe, truly believe, as a former local official, that we need to respect every elected official because we're all elected by the same constituents, by the same people. And we need to figure out why should the state place limits on what you can do at the county level? Why should the state take all of our tax dollars and they determine our priorities and we don't determine our priorities? So that's a very serious issue to me. That's something I'm going to be fighting for all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think that ties in to some degree with what we all in county government think about as unfunded mandates.
Yeah, yeah.
That the state does a good job of funding something to start with, and then they back off and they reduce their part of the pie, and then someone has to make it up. So it's your local government.
Sure.
If
Go
you
back
want
to the school funding. That formula was created in 1993 with the idea that the state was going to provide 2/3 of the funding. So then they put limits on each school district set at the level they were at in 1990, which is a bad idea anyway. So here we are 25 years later, they're still at the limits they were in 1993. But then they backed off, and we have never seen 2/3 funding from the state of Wisconsin. So it's all rhetoric, and it's time to free up local officials to do what they are elected to do, and let the constituency and the voters in each area determine through elections whether or not they are willing to invest their taxes into their schools and into their county roads and into their town roads and things like that.
We've covered about small coverage of 4 or 5 different things. Are there any other areas that are a priority that come to mind that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Well, we need to honestly respect everyone. And we need equal pay for everyone, no matter what gender they are, what ethnicity they are. We need to be sure that we have voter registration open for everybody, and because right now it's made very difficult. Everybody who's legally eligible to vote should be voting and should have that opportunity to be registered automatically, and then given the information they need and the power that they need to vote. It is a power that we have in this country. Veterans in war have fought for us to have that power. We need to respect that and continue and to use that power.
We're coming to the end. John's giving us the high sign here, and I thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Dick.
And I want to thank you for running. It's important that we have candidates out there, people willing to give of themselves and represent us. And I would suggest to the audience today that educate yourself on the candidates, get out and vote, and we'll see you all at the polls.